everybody, hope you're doing well. Welcome back to another One Piece review. This time we're covering Manga chapter 1153, The Birth of Loki. The biggest takeaway from me when it comes to this chapter as far as Oda is Oda did a very good job of zeroing in on and focusing and highlighting the reason why there's so much discrimination, bigotry, especially when it comes to Hajrudin and Loki. Oda did a very good job of highlighting that, but giving us different perspectives from different outlooks and different characters. I thought that was very excellent how Oda handled that, and it's only going to add more to when we get that inevitable reconciliation of Hajrudin and Loki when they join up with Luffy to take care of the Holy Knights. That adds more emotion now. In turn, you can say this is actually the tale of three journeys as far as Elbaph is concerned. I'll get into that later as we go along. We also get introduced to the two mothers involved in this flashback, which Ida, the first mother, comes across as very likable and, in my opinion, may end up being the best character of this entire flashback. The second mother, Estrid, we get introduced to, and oh boy, what a piece of work that she was. And I will say this, if you're a parent and you read this chapter, I can only assume your first instinct, seeing how Estrid acted towards Loki, your first instinct was to try and reach through that screen and strangle her. I feel like outside of that, as far as King Harold and his backstory, I don't think it stands out on its own. Because immediately, and I saw this too, I can already see it being compared to the Kazuki. In fact, there's two scenes that it's pretty much shout-outs to the Kazuki Oda flashback, which I don't know if that's the best approach, considering you want King Harold and his own story to stand out. We got the cover page, and I guess Oda giving a shout-out to Pride Month, considering we're still in the month of June, because we got Yamato and the Daimyo of Ringo, Kiku, embracing, so that was pretty cool. Also got Sho in the background, and it looks like she's taken over Hyogura's position as the boss of the Yakuza, because it's describing Sho as the boss, so I'm pretty sure that's what it's pointing towards. And it makes sense given the different age that Wano's now in, so it would make sense. And the fact that Oda decided to focus only her in this cover page alongside Yamato and Kiku. Like I said, it's pretty cool those two are embracing, and I think this technically should be the last Akazaya 9 that Yamato interacts with, because we had Yamato interact with Nakamomoshi, Inorashi, Denjiro, Shinobu technically because she was kunai training with Tama. Then went to Raizo, and then recently we had Kawamatsu, and now in this cover page we got Kiku. So technically that should be it. Unless you want to include Kinemon, but Kinemon's the one that gave Yamato this quest in the first place. So technically, this should be it. So I don't know if Oda's going to continue on with the interactions here. But we start off with this chapter, and immediately Oda kind of highlights, not really hyping up King Harold, but also just giving us an outlook on Harold before he met Ida. Because the first panel is Lil Dorian Brogy along with Harold causing havoc, because you see the villagers in the background, specifically the lady in the background kind of disapproves of this. It's like, oh, not these rugrats again, not these brats again. Honestly, it's exactly what we got introduced to when we came to Elbaph, so I'm not too surprised by this. I do find it interesting in one scene as King Harold has like a hammer, I guess like father like son, but on the ship he clearly has a katana. We go to the kingdom of Bunt in the New World. We get introduced to the first woman and the first love, in my opinion, of Harold's life, Ida, who, in my opinion, is being treated as kind of like a sideshow act. And you'd see, this is something you would see, freak show act, where you have the showman displaying a person because the appearance may be different to others, so they get treated as freak shows. It's been around for centuries, since the 19th and 20th century. This is what it comes off as, but I will say the first thing that stands out is Ida's personality and her ideology and the way she views this. But let's be real, this is exactly what it is. They're exploiting Ida because of her size and making it seem like she's from Elbaph. You're right, I should tell you that is complete bullshit for three reasons. One, we later find out that the horns attached to Ida's head are fake. 2, I don't see a showman or the kingdom of Bun trespassing on Elbaph and kidnapping Ida. The third and the biggest reason of all is because of what Ro told Nami, Luffy and Zoro back at Ora's castle, as saying Ida was not from Elbaph, so therefore Ida was not recognised as the queen, and the marriage wasn't recognised, as well as Hajrudin not being accepted. He wasn't allowed in Ora's castle despite the fact that who his father was. So we knew that going in, so this was complete bullshit. This scene is a way for Oda to introduce Harold to meet Ida, the first woman of his life. So he's eyeing in on this auction or this freak show act, so he's like taking exception to this because he's thinking Ida's from Elbaph, so he's gonna like free her. He brings her on board, but this only pisses off Ida. And this is the first thing that stands out. Her personality, like, even though Ida doesn't come off as violent in nature, you got Harold completely arrogant, saying, oh, no need to thank me. I'm the king of Elbaph. I couldn't sit back while they diss my homeland. So Ida just smacks the living shit out of Harold. And in my opinion, knocks the love into King Harold. Because it's at that point, Harold's outlook completely changes going forward. But yeah, she smacks the living shit out of Harold, not once but twice. And her reasoning is why she's so upset is because, first off, turn the ship around because you need to apologise for hurting a lot of people. So even what I said a minute ago where Ida was being exposed as kind of like a sideshow act, Ida sees the positives from this. So they took me in and gave me work after finding me adrift. We come to find out she roams the seas, even at the brink of death. So she was on the brink of death, traveling the seas, and it's because of their kindness she was able to earn enough to eat and recover from her injuries. So she saw good in that, even though I'm pretty sure the only reason they did that was to line their pockets and treat it as a sideshow act. The fact that they planted fake horns to her head to make it seem like she was from Elbaph just because of her appearance, yeah. And it may not be the showman or the woman we see. It may because we know that we couldn't find out there's a king there, so that could be the reason why they did that. And then Harold refers to them as, you want to go back to that puny doll kingdom again. Ida takes exception to that because it's like, dolls, what's that supposed to mean? You have to be born big. Your strength is a quirk of fate. I mean, talk about being called out. Last chapter was Zoro about not understanding concurrent haki. Ida calling out Harold, you think you're better just because you were born big, because you were from Elbaph. Don't kid yourself into thinking you're better than humans, you arrogant disgrace. Wow, was that a way? I think that actually hurt King Harold way more than those two slaps did. This is why all us giants get a bad rep, because we're always lumped in with you Elbaph savages, which is part of the problem that is going on right now, and even in the present in Elbaph. I like that Oda focused on the different perspectives. In this case, it's coming from the perspective of somebody who wasn't from Elbaph in the form of Ida, but she gets treated as a giant from Elbaph because of her height and her appearance. But you see, this obviously hits Harold hard because while she goes back to like apologize to make amends, you see Harold just waiting. He doesn't set sail. He's like waiting by the ship, and then he's like telling his subordinates, "Hey, like, give them a hand, patch things up." And then he later goes in to apologize himself. So you can see like there's a change. Because they appear before the king and you see Ida forcing kind of Harold. He doesn't want to, but he's being forced to like bow in apology. But then we cut to like Harold being like interacting with humans, and the dialogue is pretty much like, hey, look at this. Look at it like this. The destruction of anything in this world is a waste. That was done by design because it obviously gets Harold to think about the bigger picture and it makes him change his outlook. But we also get the panel, which in my opinion is foreshadowing, because we've got a banquet involving humans and the giants. And you got the giants doing the Nika pose, the Nika dance, the Sun God Nika dance. So, and you also have the moon in the background. So if that isn't like foreshadow, I don't know what is. And before anybody says, we already got a banquet involving the Straw Hats. Well, two things. One, Frankie and Robin went off doing their own thing, so they weren't a part of the banquet. Neither was Saul, because they were at the library along with Chopper, Bonnie and Lilf. So they weren't a part of that too. The second thing, this banquet and meeting, which I think here is foreshadowing for what's about to go down, is going to involve Loki and Hajrudin. So it has to be an inclusion of everybody on Elbaph for this to like mean anything. We get the backstory of like Ida. She was born in the South Blue at a place called Saviour. I think the Saviour is more or less a pun because of the island she was from. It's more or less a tropical island in the South Blue, but the fact she was from the South Blue is like, I mean, that's pretty much confirming. Like, but we actually get some world building here because we actually get to see. I think it's the same tribe that Chopper was with because we see the tribal tattoos. I think that's them, but they're talking about. Well, I'm just talking about crossing over the red line and can't go back. So I kind of want to know more. And considering Ida's still around by the end of this chapter, I kind of want to. I hope Oda kind of dives deeper into that because it may have some connection to the world government. Maybe. Or is it just a random comment that Oda's not going to follow up on and it really doesn't mean much of anything. And you can see King Harold is taking a liking to Ida because he's like, hey, why don't you come back with me to Elbaph? You're going to find out we're not as savages as you think. Which we get a Kazuki Oda and Tokiyama Mitsuki moment on the ship with Harold and Ida, which is pretty cool, but you can't look at this objectively and not think about comparisons here because it's exactly a callback to that, especially when you got people in the background eavesdropping in on their conversation. Here you got three random subordinates now. They're out there. The dialogue they're exchanging here is kind of like they're disturbed because they're not too thrilled about King Harold changing, and hopefully it's just a phase. And I thought that's kind of a weird scene for subordinates that follow King Harold to like say. Especially when we come to find out that it's not just the people that sit in the throne that are part of the problem. It's the people running things behind the scenes on Elbaph specifically are just as much part of the problem. Speaking of which, we cut to Elbaph 105 years ago. King Harold returns and he's like, it's time we atone. I need to explore the world and travel overseas to extend a hand of reconciliation to our neighbours and learn their cultures. You can take this quote and apply it to what we got at the end of this chapter, and you can mark Hajrudin as somewhat of a hypocrite. I'll get into that by the end. But King Harold, his outlook, he's completely changed. He's like, our land could become more prosperous if we learn more from the world, which is true. It's kind of cool that Harold's hyping up Dory and Brogy by saying they treat humans fairly and honourably, despite the fact they're running amok. But it on the one hand it's kind of cool, but on the other hand it's kind of like a reminder of what's going on in the present. It's like, oh fuck, it's super messed up because it kind of adds a lot more emotion to that now, considering how they're fighting against their own brother, and thanks to Gunko / Ibu manipulating them, turning them into demons. But I feel like we might get a reference to Little Garden where this not only pisses off Usopp but Luffy as well. Because remember how they acted when the fight got sabotaged on Little Garden. Imagine that how they'll react here. So they continue to explore the seas, and I actually do like this, even though it's again references to because the Odin flashback, especially when you have Harold writing up a journal in the ship. I mean, tell me that doesn't scream Kozuka Odin flashback vibes. But it's kind of adorable. You got Ida in the background sleeping. King Harold is like, we need to forge connections outside of Elbaph. Then we cut to 81 years ago and the birth of Hajrudin, and immediately this is where the problems escalate for Elbaph, because we see that Hajrudin is born, but immediately the higher ups who are silhouetted are pretty much rejecting their marriage. They're rejecting the fact that we can only allow pure blood within the royal family. So obviously we know Ida gets discriminated, so she can't become a queen. Their marriage doesn't get officially recognised. It's not that they don't get married, but they just don't recognise it. So it doesn't make it official, which sucks, but that's part of the problem. It's really to do with the puppeteers who are pulling the puppet strings in the shadows that Oda conveniently wants to silhouette and keep hidden. So I'll come back to that later, because I think that's going to play a role as to what's going on right now. As far as Ida and Harold to separate, because obviously they can't live this way if they're not together. Ida actually sees the good in this. It's like, isn't that great, Hajrudin? At least you get to stay near your papa, because it is kind of cool. Hajrudin and Ida are being allowed to live on Elbaph despite not being from Elbaph. So I thought that was actually pretty cool. But then immediately, the higher ups in Silhouette, they continue to like mess things up even further, because it's like, oh, check it out. I know you're not happy about not being able to marry Ida, but we got your perfect replacement in the form of, we get introduced to Estrid, the second woman of King Harold's life, who immediately is like highlighted as carrying the noble blood of ancient giants. So she's legit. She was born in the alcohol village to the north. And also, I would have made it a point to like highlight she's a student who mastered earth, wind, arts. And Estrid kind of mentions something about this later on too. I will say here, I'm going to be honest here, as far as aesthetics and looks go, she's probably a perfect 10 out of 10. As far as one of the best looking females we see on Elbaph. I mean, the only two that kind of match that are Ripley, who I think is better looking, either way, and Gerd, who I think is a better overall character. It's pretty much a smoke show in her own right. Estrid is obviously 10 out of 10 as far as being a smoke show herself, but that's the only positive coming from Estrid. Everything else, she's a negative 10 out of 10. Her personality sucks. Like, the way she's acting the moment they meet, it's like, all the energies here are aligned to the east. This won't do it. I was surprised she wasn't going to bring up astrology, to be honest with you. Then she said, oh, the king's spirit is leaking out, shut the window. I'm pretty sure he's dying inside because of how different Estrid is in personality-wise in comparison to Ida. I mean, I'd want to escape from Elbaph too if I had to deal with that. Estrid is even more being ridiculous. And she's like, oh, the mirror, tisk, tisk, tisk. This won't do it all. It's positioned in a lethal 5-star configuration. What the hell is that about? Then she introduces Ajra, her horse of good fortune, apparently. And myself, I don't think it has much correlation here, but I think I could definitely see Zoro fans going above and beyond to like draw comparisons. And oh, this has to do with Zoro. Maybe we'll see Ajra on Elbaph. Slow your jets. We don't know. But apparently it's a horse with like 8 legs, so that makes me wonder if it has some type of devil fruit. But then even while Harold is not even around, she's like switching things up. She's like, the king should be focused on energies of earth and wind. I was looking for the part, oh, don't forget water and fire. She's like the avatar of Elbaph here. I was waiting for the fire and water. But while she's being entitled and completely self-centered, you got Harold overseas still going about influencing the world. And we see this because he has like somewhat of a compass. It's called the Pole Star, which I'm wondering if that's kind of like the foreshadowing of what will become the log pose. But apparently this compass doesn't move. Again, we know technology advances further down the road, so maybe it could be a shout out to what becomes the log pose later down the line. This is actually cool. We actually get some information about King Harold visiting Fishman Island. In fact, he mentions a prince by the name of Neptune was born, so that was kind of cool. Again, it can seem like it's like you can compare this to the Kazuki Odin flashback, considering we saw Roger and Odin find their way to Fishman Island. Only in this case, we got little Shirley giving them the prophecy that Shirahoshi would be born. Here, we got the mention of King Harold meeting Neptune when he was a prince and being born, so that's pretty cool. But back at the castle, we get the birth of Loki, and man, oh man, it was one thing with Estrid's personality when we got introduced. This takes it to a whole other level because you got Estrid looking very excited to meet her child's face, but that's as far as it goes. Because after that, it's complete. She's horrified because obviously Loki, his appearance, his like eyes is like of a demon. Instead of actually being a mother and trying to like be happy that a child's born, Estrid is completely thinking about herself, and immediately she darts out of the bed after giving birth, and she's like freaking out. It's like, child can't be mine. That thing can't be mine. And you know this is a problem where even the doctors that are holding the child, they're not even freaking out by this. It's Estrid who's being the complete douche here, completely rejecting Loki just because of the appearance from the moment he was born. Tell the king it was a stillbirth. This is unacceptable. It's cursed. Just look at it. It's a monster. The next scene, and this is what stands out to me, because you got Loki trying to reach out as any child would, and nobody's like trying to embrace or reach out for this child in response. And instead, you get the panel of Loki tearing up, and I feel like that is so accurate of the way you can describe Loki in the present, because I feel like there's certain instances where Loki has shown emotion, but he's trying to ball it inside, and I feel like that's going to add more to the reconciliation along with Hajrudin. Further than that, Estrid throws Loki into the underworld, into the realm of the dead, only for Loki, bloody, beaten and bruised, crawls his way back up. And even after that, that's not good enough for Estrid, because you got like a servant of Estrid, like, where are you going? Like, Estrid's like, I want nothing to do with this village, I never wanted to give birth again, all because of this. She's like blaming this on the birth. I'm surprised she didn't blame this on the king. And you got Estrid, in my opinion, and this is where the prophecy comes from that kind of like paints Loki in such a negative light. Dispose of the child. It's becoming clear this was foretold long before it came into the world. It is said that King Harold will someday be slain by his own son. But my question is, if that's the case, why did she go out of her way to like marry and pretend like she loved King Harold? As much as a douche as she is, like, a lot of this can be pinned on the fault of like the higher ups that were silhouetted that forced this marriage in the first place. Like I said, the parallel of Loki crawling back, first of all, the fact that as an infant he's crawling back up to the realm of the dead and in that condition is like insane. What also doesn't help is the fact that you got King Harold like struggling with his own problems. He's completely like mentally coping. He's struggling with the fact that the world government has rejected him. So it's not really specifically stated, but consider what Shanks said about meeting King Harold back in Marajoa. I can only assume there was some type of revelry where King Harold tried to get Elbaph accepted by the world government, and I find it funny considering what we've got now. So while Loki is crawling out of instincts back up the realm of the dead, then you got Ida interacting with Hajrudin, and in my opinion, this makes Hajrudin kind of a jerk here as well. Even though it's not as vile as the way that Estrid was acting towards Loki, Hajrudin is no saint in this either, because Ida's like, don't you want to meet your little brother, see the little guy? And Hajrudin is like, no, he's completely rejected him. He's not your son, Mom, so I don't recognize him as a brother. Which I've got something to say about that by the end. But Oda ends it off with, apparently the queen collapsed, I'll get to that also in a minute, due to ill health. Then Oda gives on the caption, from then on, every misfortune that struck Elbaph was chalked up to Loki's curse. So everything bad that happened to Elbaph was pinned on Loki. So that's the way that Oda decided to end this chapter. Like I said, if you look at this for overall, I think you can I think there were a lot of comparisons to the Kazuki Oda flashback that doesn't make King Harold stand out as much. Though I will say, like I said, I think Ida by far is part of this entire flashback. Just like I said at the beginning, my main takeaway and the thing that Oda did really well is highlighting why there's so much discourse and discrimination and bigotry when it comes to Elbaph, especially like I said, when it comes to Loki and Hajrudin. So that was really good that Oda focused on that, and it's not something new. Oda's been doing this since the moment we arrived on Elbaph, but this is giving us different aspects and different perspectives from different characters. Ida being the biggest example of this. Like I said, we get the mention of Queen Estrid collapsed due to ill health when Road mentioned that to Luffy, Zoro, and Nami back at Oris Castle when they were exploring. Road mentioned that the queen, due to ill health, she passed away. But after this chapter, it clearly couldn't have happened to a nicer queen. Like, honestly, screw that douche. The way she was like disregarding, like completely rejecting, like Loki, saying, "Oh, this child was never born. Like, I do not speak of this." I think Oda did that brilliantly because he got the right amount of emotion from you. Because the more you feel this way, the more it's going to add to the overall reconciliation of Hajrudin and Loki, and when we get that moment, it's actually going to mean more. And really, the reconciliation has to come from both. And judging from this chapter, Hajrudin is no saint, like I said. Hajrudin comes off as a jerk in this chapter because he's completely rejected Loki just because they don't have the same mother, which I feel like goes against Ida and especially King Harold's ideals. I can't wait to see what it is that actually causes King Harold to rip his horns off his head, disregarding Elbaph. As I also said, that's going to be the tale of 3 journeys when it comes to Elbaph. We got part of it explained in the present with the difference in ideology. We saw it in the past with the reveal of this. Obviously, it's not over yet, but it's obviously going to lead to Hajrudin and Loki patching things up. It's going to be emotional in itself, but that itself is going to lead into the future of Elbaph. I feel like the healthy example of this is Scopper and Ripley and Colin, because I feel like that's a shining example of the direction Elbaph should be headed in. But like I said, this does not paint Hajrudin in a positive light, considering, especially with Rhodes saying like Hajrudin had it rough because his mother not coming from Elbaph, so therefore he's not allowed into the castle, so he got rejected as royalty, which is fine. But in this chapter, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, yeah, sure, you may have had Loki may have been a dick. I'm not saying Loki is innocent as well, but when you draw comparisons, yeah, there's definitely fault on both sides. You didn't have it all that bad, because at least you had a mother figure that actually cared for you. Estrid kind of rejected Loki at birth, abandoned this child just because of the pure appearance of Loki, and calling it a cursed child. I guess we're gonna find out what happens to Ida. But it's so funny to me, like, if you were coming into this chapter pro team Loki and nothing that you saw from this flashback was going to change that, I can honestly see Loki becoming 100 times more sympathetic than Hajrudin right now. And I don't know if that was Oda's design, but if it was, he definitely got the right emotion from you, because it's going to add more to the reconciliation of the two. The person that would accept and understand Loki better than anybody is Ida. Look at where she came from and how she gets linked to Elbaph because of her appearance. So again, we don't really know if what's going to happen with her. There is a small part of me that thinks she could be Mosa, and I only see that because of what we got with the Kazuki Oda flashback, where we got Kazuki Sukiyaki, the father of Kazuki Oden, introduced in the flashback, and Oda wanted us to make us think that he was killed during the flashback. But later on, we, along with Robin, found out that was not the case. So we don't know. It wasn't really specifically stated if Ida was killed. I can see it happening, but there's also a small part of me that Mosa could be Ida. But let me know what you guys think down below. This definitely made Loki 100 times more sympathetic. But Ida, in my opinion, is the best character to come out of this flashback so far. That I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But yeah, before I was kind of questioning why Oda chose now to highlight this flashback when he had the chance to do it before. I'm not gonna switch my stance and say this is definitely the right time, because I still don't feel that way. But I can kind of be more open and understand why Oda decided, okay, I have all the pieces in place. Before we get to the final fight, I need to do this. So I can understand that. Do you think I'm right? And do you think the fans are going to shit all over Hajrudin because of this? Because it makes him look like a hypocrite, honestly, given what we found now. If you're a fan, if you're a fan of Loki and you're pro team Loki, I don't think anything that was mentioned in this chapter is going to change anything. If anything, it's just going to make you want to be violent against Estrid, but unfortunately, the illness beat you to it. Let me know what you guys think down below. If you enjoyed this video, you guys know what to do. Hit that thumbs up. I thank you guys for all the support. Subscribe to the channel for One Piece, and I'll catch you guys later. Thanks, guys.